Let me start with Mr. Bastin there. So Alipay has long been trying to push into foreign markets. So what's so special about this move that allowing Chinese consumers to use Alipay in Europe?
Well, I think it's very special indeed. It's extremely significant that this venture will take Alipay into the more lucrative European markets, countries such as France, Italy, Switzerland and Germany, where increasing numbers of Chinese tourists now venture and spend increasing amounts of money. I mean, the figures are increasing, 12% increase in number of tourists visiting Europe last year compared with the previous year, and a 17% increase in the amount they spend. So it's a real major stepping stone for Alibaba generally to enter the more lucrative international markets and not just markets closer to home. And it's a very, very important step for the internationalization generally of Chinese industry, which is a very, very important feature of the now new Chinese economy.
Mr. Huang, but this service is only limited to Chinese consumers. It's not targeting Europeans. So is this only a first step of the very first step into Europe?
I think that this should be the first step. For any company, penetrating to international turf is not easy. So usually they need a partner. Now they got one. The other one is they really want to find some launching board. Now, like a Chinese tourist, a very good and launching board for Alibaba. I think that this is a smart strategy for penetrating into the international turf.
But it's not easy, of course. Let me turn to our New York guest there, Mr. Zoldan. Do you think this will be a smooth pass for Alipay?
Listen, I think it's a great opportunity for the business community, for the end user as well. Look, we're living in this shared economy right now. To be able to transfer money to and from different organizations, whether it's financial institutions or peer-to-peer. And I think Alipay is really, they're setting a precedent right now to be able also to follow the tourism community, which I think is quite extraordinary, and quite frankly, it's very, very smart. And we are going to start seeing a precedent right now of other companies starting to follow the tourists.
And besides payment, Mr. Huang, Alipay is also saying that they try to connect merchants with the consumers. Is that a smart move, or will there be any complication in it?
I think that's a smart move too. You look at most of Chinese tourists, originally they are going abroad on their guided tour. Most of them like in a group. And then when they arrived into the foreign countries, and then the local people take them, whatever they want to be as a group. But nowadays, more and more people are self-serving. And then when they go into the new countries and they run into the challenge and where to find like a restaurant or the interest place, in the international side of it, for example, if the US travelers are going to Europe, they can use the application they call the Trip Advisor to find out what's the most interest for them. There's not much on those applications for Chinese tourists. So I think Alipay really found a niche and also the need and for the Chinese tourists. I think this is also a good starting point.
Of course there's need, but I have a concern that because we're entering a mobile internet era, some would say that the applications, we call apps, will be the lighter the better. If it's a payment application, you just use it to pay without attaching so much social networking functions into it. So, Mr. Bastin, what's your take on this?
I think that's a genuine concern. I think the average Chinese tourist, certainly from my research, would welcome further services. Has just been said that the Chinese tourists, I think, will be pleased that not only can they pay using Alipay, but they can also find out more about local amenities, shopping centers, restaurants, theaters, bars. The typical Chinese tourist travels a lot when they travel to Europe. They're moving around from city to city, country to country. So additional services are very, very highly valued. So I don't think they'll see that as a burden. It would also be very welcome from the merchants who can find out much more about Chinese tourists. And at the moment, they know very, very little about this very different type of tourist.
But if you've seen the recent update by Alipay, it has significantly expanded. It has added a lot of social networking function into the Alipay app. Is it a good trend or not, Mr. Huang?
I think they have to do that. You look at their rival in China, for example, on Tencent, like a WeChat, and we also see the same trend, like the Tencent expand the WeChat use. Originally, just for chatting. Right now, they got a telephone services added on. They also have expanded into some enterprise uses. For example, you transfer all your PPT and through the WeChat. You even have a conference call on the WeChat, and also WeChat also have their payment system. So you can see this is looks like in China we see some consolidation into the app side of it, and then people are heavily rely on using a few apps and as compared to use a lot of apps and each for a special need. So I think it is a trend.
It is a trend, of course, but is it a smart move to do? I would like to ask Mr. Zoldan there. For instance, Facebook is also integrating some payment function into its messenger to order burgers or office appliance through its messenger service. Is it a winner takes all kind of situation, or users still have a lot of varieties to choose from?
Well, it's a good question, and I think to address your first point, it's an obvious evolution, and I think that as these individuals, as these organizations get closer to the money, it's so much about convenience. Look, if you look at fascinating, if you look at Uber doesn't own a single car. Airbnb doesn't own a single housing, a piece of real estate. It's just a level of technology that enables the end user to be able to do things out of ease and convenience. So, is it a trend? It's more than a trend, I think. I think it's going to become a real reality. But what's really interesting for me, quite frankly, is when you have these big institutions, whether it's banks or merchants, being able to merge and be able to break into certain markets, it's the smaller companies that are able to benefit from it also by wrapping themselves around it, whether it's data storage needs or secure transfers, company like Datomia, or companies like Pipestream that are communicating directly with the end users and being able to send push notifications. So it's not only about the payments, quite frankly, it's about, I think, the overall ecosystem, which for me is quite fascinating.
Well, the ecosystem is actually a buzzword here in China. When you get closer to the money, maybe you get ambitious, maybe you become greedy. Well, let's take a look. The past 3 years saw a rapid expansion of Alipay in overseas market. In the year 2012, the International Business Division was founded to focus on overseas market. Since January of 2015, it pushed into overseas market for offline payments, and by January, cold scan payments were accepted in over 70,000 merchants from around 70 countries. And in the next 3 years, Alipay hopes to upgrade mobile payment service for 1 million merchants. So, Mr. Huang, what do you think of this ambition, and what are the obstacles that Alipay will be facing?
Like any company going to international turf is not easy. Like in China, we see so many international companies, internet companies coming to China. I think most of them, if not all of them, actually failed to survive in China. So we started wondering whether the reciprocal is also true, like a Chinese company may not be able to survive internationally. And so this jury is still out. But at least we see several things Alipay did right or did well. First, they got a partner, international partner, and it looks like they're not just trying to do everything by themselves. Secondly, they're really rely on the Chinese and tourists as a launching board. That's pretty much their install base in China. So this will help them to be successful, at least to be survive and at the beginning.
Mr. Bastin, of course, Alipay will be facing strict regulations locally and, of course, strong competitors. What's your take? What are the chances of Alipay succeeding?
I think that the chances are high. I think in recent years, many Chinese companies now have shown that they can compete in international markets, penetrate those markets and build their brand very competitively, not just compete on price. So we're looking at Huawei, Lenovo, Dalian Wonder, and I think Alipay and Alibaba are probably following suit, and they're increasingly, I think, determined and self-confident and very rational in their analysis and their planning, as has been said, with a very, very good choice of partner. There will be challenges, technical challenges, legal issues, and cross-cultural issues. But I think this new breed, almost, I think, of Chinese management is very, very capable here, and I see that very, very strong chances of real success. Younger generations are leading Chinese industry in a very, very more modern way. We don't see Jack Ma perhaps as public as he used to be, and I think that there is a far more serious, rational, modern management structure and strategy in place at Alibaba, and I think that the chances of success in these more lucrative markets are very, very strong, with an increasing number, obviously, of Chinese tourists and demand there for them.
Now, Mr. Zoldan, are you that optimistic? Can you give us an analyze these strengths and weaknesses of, for instance, Apple Pay, the Google Android Pay, and Alipay?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be challenging from a natural learning curve. Obviously, Americans are very, very comfortable, with using a lot of their own technology and their own language as well. Obviously, Apple has a very, very strong brand here, and Americans, as I've always said before, are huge brand junkies. The same thing with Android. So, Alipay, I think, is going to have an uphill battle, but I think that part of their answer to that is really about collaboration and not so much competing. If Alipay can work in conjunction with a lot of these other companies, American-based companies, I think their chances of success are going to be much greater.
Last but not the least, let's talk about some technical issues. For instance, the protection of private information when you use your payments, and of course, Alipay has a lot of data regarding the consumers' habits and buying routines. It has very, very wisely guessed that what kinds of merchants or what kind of products do you want to buy. So how do you protect all these informations?
This is going to be very interesting. First of all, I think Chinese consumers' information, I don't know how much the regulation for the internet company, they can share, they can use it. Looks like they may have lots of more freedom in China to handle those data. I don't know when the travelers going to the overseas, and do they follow which country's regulation? So that's
technicality.
Yeah, the first issue. If they follow the Chinese and the regulation, and then maybe provide a better and access to the consumers' data to lots of the local shops, and so that's maybe help the local shops to boost their business. So that could be a leverage for Ali.